1, and we're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Corey Wiggins, and I had the wonderful privilege of serving as the Executive Director for the Mississippi NAACP. For now, going on several weeks or several months, we've been hosting these Friday afternoon chats with folks across different spectrums to discuss issues that are impacting our community and really try to bring forth information to our community members. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been digging into this conversation about school reopenings. Last week, we had a conversation with community leaders who have been working to support students and support parents as schools begin to reopen across the state. This week, we're really excited to have some decision makers and leaders within the school system and districts across the state of Mississippi. Today with us, we have Mr. Kevin Mays, who serves as principal at Greenwood Middle School, Dr. Morris, who's a school counselor at Blackburn Middle School in Jackson Public Schools, Dr. Hammett, who serves as superintendent of Jefferson County School District. And look, we're really excited, and I really want to get into this conversation with the folks that we have here with us today. And we'll just join in. Again, for people who have questions, don't hesitate to submit your questions via Facebook Live into the chat. Those questions will be forwarded to us, and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Look, just jumping right in, we know that the decisions and the questions and everything that's happening right now around school openings has been fluid, to say the least. There were a number of executive orders that came out this week. We're finding more information to come from CDC, from a lot of different people. I guess one of the first questions, and Dr. Hammond, I want to go to you first, is as a superintendent of a school district that I would say that's mostly rural, just what has been some of the thought process that you've used in trying to get prepared for the school year? And I think you just mentioned that today was one of your first days back, or your teachers back as well. What's been sort of the decision making you've been using?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wiggins. First, let me say I would like to thank One Voice as well as the NAACP for hosting these very important conversations, particularly as we deal with this pandemic. We, I had the pleasure to serve on the superintendent task force for MDE, and it was a group of 9 superintendents. So we kind of came up with some considerations for all school districts, and we identified 3 models: the traditional setting, basically where students would return to school 5 days a week; the hybrid model, where districts had the flexibility to do A and B schedules; and then the virtual model, where students will be at home learning. So what I did was we took those considerations. I created a community task force. We also created a medical advisory council, and we worked with our local officials to try to guide our decisions. So initially, we decided to do the hybrid model. We thought that we could bring our students back on an A and B schedule. Basically, we had 2 cohorts, cohort A and B, and we felt with the reduction in students, we could do that. But then the cases went up with COVID. So we heard from our parents. We met with our community task force as well as our medical advisory council, and we decided to give parents an option because with the rise in cases, we felt it was important for parents to have multiple options. So we went from the hybrid model only to then adding the virtual learning for parents. So we redid our reopening plan. We added virtual learning, but then we got placed on that restriction list from the governor. We were one of those 13 counties. So we met with the medical advisory team again. We were hearing from Dr. Dobbs and his people. So we said, in addition to adding the virtual learning, we didn't feel that it was safe enough to bring our students back. So we're allowing all of our students to start virtually up until September, Labor Day, and we're going to revisit that. So in making those decisions, we included our community stakeholders, we included our medical experts, we included the guidance from MDE, because we wanted a comprehensive approach. And I know as a parent myself, these are difficult times. We have to educate our students, but my highest priority is keeping everyone safe. So right now, all of our students will start actually Monday on a virtual model.
No, look, thank you for sharing that and for being transparent, because what I hear too is that even your decision making at your school district level has been fluid given what's been happening and what you've been hearing from other decision makers. Uh,
Absolutely.
Mr. Mays, I want to go to you now. Dr. Hammond sort of described that decision making as it's sort of happening at the district level, this role as superintendent. What does it begin to look like, or how do you begin to process that when you're thinking about, like, how do you put that into play in a school, given that you're a leader of a middle school in Greenwood?
I believe that, it's exactly how Dr. Hammond described it. I think that our district officials, with our superintendent, Dr. Mary Brown, and her district leadership team, I think that they took um, careful consideration about, how we were going to balance this whole effective schooling with keeping everybody safe. And so I think that although the situation was fluid, I don't think that the decision making was any different from any other year. As Dr. Hammond mentioned, we reached out to our stakeholders, teachers, administrators, specifically parents. What we tend to find out is that parents at the time back in March were uncomfortable with sending their kids back to school, and so we followed the CDC guidelines. We followed Dr. Hobbs. We followed advice from MDE, and so our approach sort of mimics, Dr. Hammond's approach, where we intended to go back with this hybrid, part virtual / model. And so once the cases started going up, we decided that, it was best for us to go all virtual. And so we'll start school on Tuesday with our students in a 100% virtual format. Our goal was to possibly go back hybrid by September. But of course, because the situation is fluid, even at the school level, we look to it as being wherever the COVID numbers take us, that's kind of where we're going to be. And so, it's like I tell my staff, it's certainly unorthodox and unusual, but it's not impossible. And so we just, we move with the vein of keeping everyone safe. And so if we make our decisions based upon that, and then, I just believe that it's certainly a paradigm shift, moving from a traditional classroom setting to a virtual classroom setting. But the COVID numbers have kind of pushed us into something that we just have to do.
Yeah. Look, I want to come back to that paradigm shift too, Mr. Mays, but I wanted to get Dr. Morrison here. We've heard both Dr. Hammond and Mr. Mays sort of talk about this decision they're making about bringing students into a classroom or doing virtual. But one of the other questions that's been part of this is the support systems or support systems for students, right? Mm-hmm. Having a student in the class versus being at home. As a school counselor, Dr. Morris, I'm very interested in your thoughts around, like, how do you support students given these decisions and how fluid they are, and supporting them in a learning environment?
Well, this is a interesting conversation for our support staff, because we're used to the physicalness of face-to-face, and now having to add the additional steps of trying to become virtual. So sometimes you'll have students or staff or even parents who are hesitant about even contacting us or coming into the building. So now we have to provide extra space for them to be able to, set up the extra Zoom to, with our school district, providing social emotional learning opportunities, not just with the teachers, but counselors as well. And our support staff taking those extra steps to be intentional about contacting students. And you will be emailing, and we'll be Zooming, and we'll be sending out invitations, because we know that anxiety is high for everybody. It's not just high for students. It's high for staff. It's high for parents. It's high for the community at large. So as we're navigating this, we're being very intentional about making sure that there's space for people to talk about how they feel and what this is like for them, and being very intentional and proactive about inquiring about those things. because people may not volunteer, but we know that those supports are necessary.
Dr. Morris, you talked about that in the context of students, and I'm wondering, what does that mean for support for parents? Because I don't know if that's something that as a counselor that the school would think about, but how you support parents, right? You have this children you're trying to support their emotional and social learning, but you have parents now who are in a different role in how they support in that virtual environment. Is there any conversations about how to support parents as well?
Right now, we're having parent trainings, and part of that is introducing parents to the platforms that are being used, trying to familiarize them with schedules and etiquette and expectations for virtual learning. So we do have that piece, but we also extend to parents the social emotional component as well. If they need to speak with us, of course, we reach out to them as we need to regarding their child. But if there's something that we need to do, we also can provide supports and connect them to resources in the community as well.
No, thank you. Mr. Mays and Dr. Hammond, Dr. Morris mentioned platforms, and assuming, sort of talking about being able to access technology. Both of you are located in rural school districts or rural parts of the state. I'm interested in hearing from both of you all, how are you approaching, since you will be offering virtual learning, how are you approaching technology and creating access to the technology students are going to need to learn with?
I'll jump in. I think this whole idea of transitioning to a virtual environment is all about emotional support of not only our students but also our parents. A lot of our processes have transitioned to online or virtual, and so those processes that have been traditionally done face to face, we've moved them online. Like online registration, we've adopted 2 online learning platforms. Canvas. We're also using WebEx and Google Meet to facilitate some of our face-to-face instruction. And so parents are uncomfortable with some of these platforms. So it's a lot about for the schools to be present and be available and make sure, like Dr. Morris said, to be intentional about our communication with parents, to make sure that we are reaching out to them to assist them with their knowledge of these platforms, with their use of these platforms, because it is a new phenomenon for us all. And so being in a rural area is just attempting to sort of move some of our cultural processes to utilizing the technology. It's not all bad. Some of it are things that we probably should have done a long time ago, but change is inevitable, but change is always met with resistance. And a lot of that resistance is because individuals are uncomfortable with that change. And so our goal, especially from the school level, is to, and we've been pretty successful at being able to do it, is to help parents and students adjust to an environment that they wouldn't otherwise, be subjected to besides this pandemic. And so I just think that being available, being intentional about our communication with parents is paramount in making sure that we transition to sort of this virtual environment successfully.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Morris and Dr. Mays. Communication and professional development are very important. We started an online parent academy where we host different Zoom sessions to go over all of our online platforms. So Canvas, Zoom, Google Meets, all of that. We're providing training for parents as well as teachers. As we transition to virtual learning, I told my technology director, if we're going to offer virtual learning to our students, we got to have some stuff in place. Last year, we didn't have any devices for our students. This year, in a matter of a few months, we're now one-to-one district. So we were able to get all of our students Chromebooks. Or last year, none of our teachers had laptops. We were able to get all of our teachers laptops. So we're slowly moving into that virtual platform where I feel like we can provide effective instruction, but professional development and communication is key, and not just for parents, but for teachers as well.
Is part of the conversation that I've had with other organizations and institutions, folks have often talked about the challenges that we're facing as a result of COVID. But it seems what I hear too is, and I would love for you all to talk a little about this, that there may be some opportunities that's hidden in this with this technology, almost in a sense, this forced technology adoption. I know both Dr. Hammond and Mr. Mays, y'all mentioned it. Could y'all speak to that? And Dr. Morris, I'm also interested, do you see on the horizon, given the challenges, are there any opportunities that we may have lying in front of us to support children or do something different as it relates to emotional and social learning?
Yeah, I definitely think each challenge presents a new opportunity. One of the challenges we're still trying to solve is internet access. Being in a rural community, even with giving our students the Chromebook, we're finding out that a lot of them just don't have access to the internet, and it's not at any fault of their own, it's just the location. So we're working on solutions to help with that. But we're looking at this as an opportunity to grow as a district. We did extremely well this past year, but now with the virtual learning, we're trying to capitalize on this opportunity. So making sure our teachers have what they need, making sure our parents have the support that they need, but then trying to find solutions when we come across problems. So we're looking at it as not so much of a challenge, but as an opportunity, and we're excited about it.
And I don't know if it's so much about being forced to have it. It's more or less being forced to utilize it. My superintendent, Dr. Mary Brown, had sort of the foresight last year to seek a grant where we were able to provide our students one-to-one last year. And so we were able to provide our students with Chromebooks and hotspots, sort of a year before. I don't think anyone expected that, we would be put in a position where we would have to be forced to effectively utilize it, so soon, but just, building such an infrastructure, she just kind of had the foresight that, it's not so much about being forced to have it, but, it's important that we move our students into this sort of technological age where, students are sort of moving away from the traditional model of classrooms. And so now we're just kind of being put on the spot really to try to adopt some of these strategies, some of these different pedagogical strategies and skills and methods, and to put those things into place so we can really see if we raise the expectations for our students, we sort of believe that they will achieve whatever it is we put in front of them. And so it's really more on the teachers and the administrators and the school district officials to try to put those things together so that we can sort of create these opportunities for our students so they can take advantage of what other school districts have already been doing.
Yeah. Dr. Morris, I would love to get you in on this question around if there's anything that you see as an opportunity. But the other thing I continue to read more and more, and we talked a little bit about this, about just in the midst of everything that's going on, particularly from a mental health standpoint of supporting our children. Are there things that even as parents could be doing or should be doing to ensure that they're even helping their children as this process to transition into, as many I've heard it described as sort of the new school environment?
As parents, I'm a parent as well. There are a lot of opportunities here for building community in your school, of course, but also in your home environment. There's more opportunity for accountability. Parents should be utilizing the platforms and communicating more with the teachers, being very intentional about making sure that students are doing the things, or their children are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing as it relates to their education, but also as it relates to just how they develop. Because we know a component of development, that social emotional part of school, is interacting with other people, interacting with their peers. And this will be a great opportunity for us to learn how to use technology appropriately, to learn how to have those conversations and how to use the chat box and how to interact with their peers in positive ways. Because sometimes our youth, they use their own language, they use their own shortcuts to do the things that they want to do, but now they're going to be challenged in another way to do that in the school setting more appropriately. And we want parents to be very intentional about the conversations and checking in with their child. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How is this for you? So there'll be plenty of opportunity there for them in their home setting, you know, not just making sure they're online when they're supposed to and doing those things, but also to check in with how are you interacting, you know, maybe even coming up with some ways to reward them or to create family time around things that help them to build those interpersonal skills that they may not be able to do face to face now that we're going to be virtual.
Look, I want to also remind folks who are listening that if you have questions, to submit your question via our comment section. One question I did want to ask you all of you all, before I get to some of these questions that are coming in. I think all of us on this call, on this Zoom, have mentioned about being parents, and I'm a parent myself with a 6th grader, 3rd grader, and kindergarten. And yes, Dr. Morris, pray for me. But I say that just because, you know, like you all, I'm sure you're having to balance the roles that you play within your schools. At the same time, the decisions that you got to make for your own children as it relates to education, their own education. And so for parents out here who are trying to make an informed decision, the best decision, what kind of advice are you offering them as they're kind of determining what it is that they need to do? I'll start with Mr. Mays and then move from there.
You know, being an educator, I think the advice that, you know, I can give parents is kind of be patient with the process. You know, I think that we are, you know, we care about our children, you know, but those of us who are working in education, you know, we care about all children. And so we understand the tough decisions that educators have to make. And so just understanding the position that, you know, superintendents and principals and teachers, district leadership staff are put in when they're trying to make the best decision, not only for their children, but for others, other children, just kind of understanding what that process looks like. And so, you know, when I look at, you know, my child, I have a 3rd grader, you know, and, you know, the things that she's going to be required to do virtually, then, you know, I just have a different level of understanding and compassion for the educational system and what they're trying to do, you know, under such limited restraints. And so my advice to parents is just hang in there. We support you. We understand that it's okay to feel the way that you feel because it's certainly unusual and unorthodox situation. But I just believe district officials around the state are making the best decisions that they can in the best interest of children.
Thank you. Dr. Hammond?
Yeah, I agree. Patience is important. I think everyone should approach this situation with patience, understanding, and grace. I believe every superintendent in our state, we are trying to do what's best for students. And we know that these are difficult decisions. As you mentioned, as a parent, I'm also concerned about the safety, but we have to educate our students, and they are the future. And we know if we want Mississippi to continue to grow, then we have to properly educate our kids. So I would ask parents to be patient with us, as Dr. Mays mentioned, but then to also approach it with understanding and grace. For my district, as I stated, we've tweaked the plan 3 or 4 times, and we're willing to do it 3 or 4 more times if we have to. But we're going to make sure we keep our students safe, but we're going to make sure also we provide them with a quality education.
Thank you. Dr. Morris?
In addition to what the gentleman before me said, I would encourage parents to, in their own homes, just to kind of begin to think about how to structure things. Because sometimes when there's low structure, you know, just like a teacher or a principal or administrator would do, superintendent would do when there's planning happening, you know, just kind of think about practically from day to day how to decrease your own personal stress. You know, what kinds of things can you be doing as far as, because if you have, I have a 9th grader and an 11th grader. Of course, they're both in high school, but, you know, still, you know, having the conversation, maybe looking over their schedule with them, you know, thinking about, okay, what kinds of things can we do in our home if the parent is going to be present or maybe not present? utilize your resources, parents. If you have friends or church members or neighbors or family members that can help you to kind of minimize some of your stress, meaning that they can kind of help with kids, or maybe we can group some kids together, or we could do some of the things that we may not have thought about before now, but because a lot of districts are virtual or hybrid, we're going to have to utilize the resources that we have to help to make this run as smoothly as it can. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not, but that we're in uncharted times, so things don't have to be perfect. So we definitely want to be gracious to ourselves and be flexible. Things are going to change, and one thing's for sure, as parents, we all know that we set the tone for our home. So when parents are able to, relax a little, decrease some of their anxiety, that helps with the children. And the things that we say about the school, the plan, whatever it is, sometimes that either adds anxiety to our kids and make the situation worse, or it's just negative, and they don't see anything positive, or they don't feel hopeful. So we want to make sure that we're not making this worse, in our homes or in the communities or with whomever we're having conversations with. We want to be positive. We want to be flexible. We want to move with this and do what is best for our kids and our communities.
Look, thank you all. One of the things that I wrote down that I think all of you all sort of mentioned or reflected upon was grace. And I think at this moment we are and being in the middle of a pandemic, we all keep going to that never-ending well of grace. So I appreciate all of you all for pointing that out. One of the questions that we got is, and any one of you all can address it, is what are ways that schools are ensuring that students with IEPs and 504 plans are receiving the support that they need to ensure their success? Anyone in particular want to talk about?
I'll jump in. Students who need a little additional support are sort of in this virtual environment of what keep us up late at night. And so what we've done at Greenwood Middle School is that we've added some opportunities within our virtual schedule for our exceptional services employees to meet with students, to try in a virtual environment to provide additional modification accommodations for those students. And so like I said, communication is paramount. And so our teachers are going to communicate with these students, assess what their needs are. Our inclusion teachers are attached to those students in those virtual classrooms. So they'll be in the classrooms with those students, even virtually, and so we're just trying to move that traditional classroom environment virtually. And so we know that those students need a little supplemental support. And so what we're going to try to do is try to provide that support the best way we can, but also trying to keep those students safe.
I think from a district level, in addition to creating our reopening plan, we put together a reopening action plan, and we identified our priority students, and students with disabilities are a part of that subgroup. What we did was we hired additional support staff to make sure that we're intentional about supporting those group of students. We also built in our schedule, as Dr. Mays indicated, some time just for those students to provide that support.
Another one of our question includes, like, are teachers and students being offered mental health support? We've talked a little bit about that for students, but are teachers also being offered mental health support? For example, different counseling services?
Yes. Our district has an employee assistance program where teachers can reach out and they can schedule sessions that are covered by the district. So we do provide supports for teachers.
We're doing the same thing in my district. We're providing additional support. We're working with outside agencies as well to come into the district to support our teachers. We also, from a district level, I do weekly check-ins. That's a time where I allow teachers to really just express themselves. We don't talk about work. I try to just have a personal conversation with my teachers, particularly those who I know are either directly or indirectly impacted by the virus. So those weekly check-ins have been very beneficial for us.
Like both districts before, the districts also have Greenville Floyd Consolidated School District also have those supports in place. But from a school level, like Dr. Hammond said, I kind of check in with my teachers. Even we've been doing professional development all week, and so we spend a lot of time online with each other, and so I try to leave some opportunity there for the teachers to just talk with each other, to socialize with each other before we get down to business, because just like students, they haven't seen each other since March. And so I just think that, to build that camaraderie, even though, most teachers will be teaching from their homes, they'll be teaching by themselves. You can't go across the hall to, engage with your fellow colleagues. And so I think it's very important for us to understand that, that teachers are in a similar mental state as the students, because, they are out of their comfort zones as well. And so it's very important that, we check in with them, we make sure that they're doing okay, and just kind of, support them emotionally as well.
Prior before we started and went live on with our conversation, I was sharing with Mr. Mays that we had an opportunity to look at Greenwood Public Schools had posted, I think, on Facebook, a video of what parents could expect when they're walking into the school and how students would be spaced out in the classroom. And I noticed that on that video, you also had you had teachers and students sort of wearing the face masks, face coverings. One of our questions that we got in was, what has been your experience in trying to access PPEs for faculty, for staff, and for students? Is that something that your districts are providing to students, or is that something you're providing to staff? What's been your experience in trying to get access to make sure that folks are safe?
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr.
Mason.
Okay. Well, in our district, sort of made the move to try to acquire a lot of the PPEs. And so they purchased face masks, they purchased hand sanitizers, gloves. I got one of the first hand-free water fountains in the district, where students will be able to come in and put cups under the water fountain with a sort of the touch-free. I think our district was intentional about trying to just kind of show parents with those videos what the school day may look like if we ever came back into the building, because we had such concern with parents being comfortable with sending their kids back into the classrooms. And so, it's the difference between knowing the CDC guidelines and recommendations and being able to show parents, what that looks like in the classroom, because, overall, they're just concerned about the safety of their children. And so we wanted to show them, specifically young children, what they will be doing and how far we were willing to go to make sure that their children were safe. And so our district really wanted to just kind of, when we put those videos out, really just wanted to kind of, show an example. We even did one for getting on the bus, standing at the bus stop, social distancing at the bus stop, just trying to make sure that parents were kind of comfortable with what their children would see if we ever did come back into the building.
Yes, as Dr. Mays indicated, we started months ago purchasing PPE. It is a little difficult to get your hands on at this time, but we wanted to make sure if we brought our teachers and students back that we had enough. I definitely want to thank my community for helping out. They donated more than probably 10,000 masks and other PPE supplies. So it's been a real community effort in making sure we keep everyone safe in Jefferson County.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look, we have a few minutes left. And as we get close to get ready to close it out, I want to make sure that at least leave a little time for you all to be able to share anything that you may want to share with students, with parents, other school leaders. We have folks from across the state. We know that while you all from 3 different school districts here in Mississippi, a lot of the decisions, the conversations that people are having are very similar to the things that you all have listed here. Is there anything that you would want to share right now with maybe parents or teachers or students as they are getting ready to return to school, for students to get ready to show up to a learning environment, whether it be in school or virtual? Dr. Morris, I'll start with you.
I would just like to encourage parents, administrators, staff, teachers, everybody in the community to just be mindful of the things that are going on in secret, if you will, as far as anxiety and depression and mental health concerns. And that if you realize or just be intentional about checking in on people, checking in with coworkers, with parents, with students, just talking, keeping the conversation going, keeping the door open, so that if you do recognize something, you can utilize the suicide hotlines. You can reach out to other people to provide, so that people are not alone. I mean, we are in our own homes, or we may be, not able to physically touch people, but because we know that, that means that we need to be very intentional about reaching out and making sure we're checking, that we're utilizing technology for more than just social media sake, but being able to look, thinking of you, how are you doing today? Sending out text messages, and checking on people, and encouraging our students to do the same. And if we recognize something is wrong, or if we're unsure, let's make sure we contact someone, or give them some resources, or send them in the direction of someone that can help them, because this is a time that's difficult, or can be, for everybody. So I would just encourage us to make sure that we are being intentional about connecting and considering other people's mental health.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Morris. Mr. Mays, and Mr. Mays, we got one question that came in, was around cleaning of schools or deep cleaning of processes. I hope that you or Dr. Hammett could address that in y'all final comments as well, too.
Okay. The first thing I would say, I would piggyback off of Dr. Morris to say we need to be extra concerned about our children. Now, our children are out of their comfort zones. They've been out of school for a little over almost 6 months now. And so, their usual day involves school, and it's looked that way, for however many years they've been in school. And so I think it's that we have to have a little compassion, a little understanding, for what they're going through, to check on them, to make sure that they are embracing this virtual environment the best way that they know how. They are children. Adults think a little bit different, but for children, kind of being out of their comfort zone rattles them in such a way. And so we want to just make sure that we are providing the proper supports for our students as well as our parents. I also would like to, just to give some advice to, the community at large, is just, embrace the opportunity for new experiences, because although we've been forced in this position, it's not all bad. We have to make the best out of this situation. And so we're going to experience some new opportunities, some new theories, some new strategies, some new processes. And so it's just incumbent upon us to try to embrace those new experiences, to make the best out of them, to put our best foot forward, our best efforts forward, to try to make this sort of virtual learning, or if we go back, hybrid learning, as effective as possible. As far as cleaning is concerned, our district put a plan in place to successfully or effectively clean the buildings on a daily basis, especially if students were here. There was a process in place for a deep cleaning, whether it be cleaning carpets or washing down desks, or just making sure the building is as sanitized as possible, because those were some of the guidelines and recommendations that came from CDC, and our district embraced those guidelines, put a plan in place so that that we will be complying. And so yes, deep cleaning is one of those issues that I think districts addressed or wanted to address, or are attempting to address, to make sure that if we do come back in the building, that our students are safe from any germs that would harm them in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. Dr. Hammond?
Yes, I would just like to thank our state superintendent, Dr. Wright, for her leadership during this pandemic. Dr. Wright, as well as her leadership team at the Mississippi Department of Education, they have really supported our districts. And a lot of times, I don't know if that message get out to the community, but they have been very flexible in giving us some very open and giving us some flexibility as school districts. So definitely want to thank her and her leadership team. But this pandemic has also, I believe, brought the communities together. I've never seen so much community support compared to what we've had in the last 3 or 4 months. As I mentioned, donations here and there, everybody trying to work together because we all understand how important it is to educate our kids. I would tell parents that as school leaders, we're going to make sure we do everything in our power to keep your kids safe, but also to provide them with a quality education. To our teachers, I want them to know that we're going to provide them with the professional development as well as the support to make sure that they're providing quality instruction. And then to our students, we understand that they are the future, and we want to make sure we prepare them to be leaders of tomorrow. So we're all working together across the state. They have some great things going in every district. We're all trying to figure this out, and I think together we're going to be a better state and better school districts because of it.
Look, again, you know, I did it twice before we got started. I'm gonna do it one more time for good sake. I want to personally thank each and every one of you all for participating on this Zoom. We know Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock can be a tough time and a hard time to have the energy to show up and have this type of conversation. But I personally appreciate each of you all for doing it. I think what you shared today, and I keep going back to this word grace, that while our school leaders and decision makers are working hard to keep both our children safe and to provide them with quality education, that we all show each other a little bit of grace in that process. I would like to just thank our state president at NAACP, Reverend Robert James, the executive director for One Voice, and Shami Lambright, for working to create and facilitate this space for these types of conversations. And again, if we did not get to your question, we'll be able to follow up with your question. We look forward to continuing this conversation on next Friday at 4 p.m. with our final conversation around education and school reopenings. And thank each and everyone for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.